the information that we know to carry out this example now. So they don't give us a picture, they don't give us a diagram. We just need to kind of imagine, or I guess we could draw out what we're actually looking at. So example number 3 says the circumference of a circle is 24 pi centimeters. What is the exact area of the circle? So I want us to write out a couple of things before we get started. Firstly, I want us to write out that we find the circumference of a circle by 2 pi r. So that means that, again, we need to know that radius in order to figure out the circumference. Now, we find the area of a circle by pi r squared. So we can actually solve this problem in 2 different ways. So what we're going to do firstly is draw a circle, because they ask us to draw a diagram to assist you in solving the problem. So we're going to draw a circle, and remember that we always need the radius when we are carrying out the circumference or the area of a circle. And so we're just going to draw the radius in there. So we'll pretend like this is what our circle is going to look like. It asks us what information we need to solve this problem. So we need one of 2 things. We need either the radius, that would be really nice, or we need the diameter, because we know that the diameter, we can use the diameter to find the radius, because radius equals 1/2 of the diameter. So we will take either radius or the diameter. It doesn't really matter to us. So they're asking us to now find the area of this circle. We know that the circumference of the circle is 24 pi. So I'm going to write that out over here. So the circumference of our circle is 24 pi. And I know that this is a little bit different for you guys to see this written as 24 pi. So we can really represent the circumference of our circle, or the area of our circle, in terms of pi. We're leaving that pi symbol in there instead of multiplying our number by pi. If they ask you to just find the area or the circumference of the circle, not in terms of pi, so it might just not even say anything about pi, then you're going to actually multiply that 24 by pi. So for now, we're just going to ignore the fact that they did not carry out the entire equation. They did not multiply 24 by pi, which is perfectly acceptable. We can leave it as 24 pi. That's okay. In this case, we're really happy to leave it as 24 pi, and there's a reason for that. So remember, 24 pi is our circumference. We're going to set that equal to our equation for finding the circumference of a circle, because we're really interested in what the radius is. So we're going to do this way, and then, well, I guess this is the only way that we can do it. Okay, so notice that I have a pi on both sides of my equation. So since that pi is being multiplied on both sides of my equation, if I divide both sides of my equation by pi, that means that I get rid of pi on both sides. So I am left with 24 equals 2r. And remember, I'm trying to figure out my radius. So I really want r all by itself. And right now, 2 is being multiplied by r. So I'm going to divide both sides of my equation by 2 to get r all by itself. So my radius, the radius of my circle, is actually 12 centimeters, because 24 divided by 2 is 12. So now that I know my radius, I can carry out my area, or I can find the area of my circle. So the equation for area of a circle is area equals pi r, meaning the radius, squared. So I'm going to rewrite this with my radius. So area equals pi times 12 squared. So now I can write the radius of my circle in 2 ways. The area of my circle in 2 ways. I can simply write it as area equals, well, 12 times 12, which is 12 squared, is 144. So area equals 144 pi. And I could stop there and add my centimeters squared. And that is perfectly acceptable for the area of my circle. If I wanted to know the exact area of my circle, I could go onto my calculator and I could multiply 144 by that pi button, and I would get the area of my circle is 452.3 9 centimeters squared. So it does not matter how you write out the area of your circle. You can write it out in terms of pi, or you can carry out that equation and multiply your number times pi to get the actual area of your circle. So what we just did was we used the information that they had given us about the circumference of the circle and our knowledge of the equation to find the circumference so that we could get the radius. And then we were able to use our area formula in order to find the area using our now known radius. So that was really cool. And we're going to keep doing that. So I could have said right here that the radius of my circle was 12 centimeters. I could have replaced that there. All right. So we're going to take a look at a couple more problems kind of similar to this one, because really it's important for you guys to understand this entire process. So I'm going to skip ahead to my next. All right, so in terms of my exercises, number 1 says find the area of a circle with a diameter of 42 centimeters. So I'm going to write this out again. Remember that we find, whoops, whoa, that got way too small. So let's undo that. There we go. And let's move to the pen. Okay. So remember that we find the area of a circle by pi r squared. So we need to know that radius. Remember that we can find the radius by saying radius, which is r, radius equals 1/2 times that diameter. So we're going to use that information right now in order to solve this problem. And we're keeping in mind that they're asking us to use pi equals 22/7. So right now they're telling me that the diameter of my circle, so I'm going to draw a circle here for us, the entire distance across my circle is 42 centimeters. I want to know halfway across my circle. So I'm going to do this in 2 ways. I could either multiply the diameter of my circle by 1/2, so 1/2 times 42, or I could divide 42 by 2. Okay, so turn off your microphone, please, Zach, unless you have a question. All right, so 42 times 1/2 is 21. So now I know that the radius of my circle, and 42 divided by 2 is also 21. So the radius of my circle is 21. So I'm going to use that information in finding the area of my circle because that's what they asked for. So the area of my circle is going to be found by multiplying pi times my radius squared. Now they told us that we're going to use 22/7 in place of pi. So I'm going to plug 22/7 in place of pi, and I'm going to multiply that by my radius, which is 21, and I need to square that radius. So simply, the equation that I'm going to use is 22/7 times 21 squared. So my area, I'm going to leave that 22/7 for now, and I'm going to find the my 21 squared. So 21 times 21 is 441. And remember, that's actually over 1. So I'm going to multiply straight across, and 441 times 22 is 882 over 7 times 1 is 7. So now I ask myself, how many times can 7 go into 882? And 882 divided by 7 is 126. So the area of my circle is 126. No, that's not right. Hold on, I did something wrong, guys. I forgot to multiply. What did I do here? Let's see. Let me see that again. 22 times 441 is not 882. Sorry about that, guys. I don't know where I got that from. That is 9,702. Okay, so let's see how many times 7 goes into 9,702. And it is actually, I'm so sorry about that, 1,386 centimeters squared. Now that makes so much more sense. So that means that the entire inside space of my circle is 1,386 centimeters squared. That is the area of my circle. So if I had a circular table and I wanted to put a tablecloth over my circular table, I would need to know how many centimeters of cloth I would need to at least cover that table. Now, it wouldn't be draping over the edges because I'd need more material than that. But just to cover the top of my table with material, I would need 1,386 centimeters squared of fabric just to cover the entire top of my table. So that's kind of what we're asking ourselves as we're finding the area of our circle. So we're going to move on now to number 2, and number 2 is just a little bit different. So number 2 says the circumference of a circle is 9 pi centimeters. So we're going to write all of this out again. Remember that we found the circumference by 2 pi r. That's how we find the circumference. We find the area of a circle by pi r squared. We're remembering that we can find the radius of a circle if we have the diameter by multiplying the diameter times 1/2. And we can find the diameter if we know the radius by multiplying 2 times the radius. And we're keeping in mind here that r equals radius. And this is important stuff for you guys to write down, so please be sure you write it down. D equals diameter. C equals circumference. And A equals area. So there's kind of your little cheat box there in terms of finding, or in terms of all of really the equations that you need for a circle. So they ask us, what is the diameter? And if we come over here and we look at our information, we see that their circumference is 2 pi r, and the diameter is 2 times the radius. So we're looking for the diameter, or we could use the radius as 1/2 the diameter. So we're going to use the information. Firstly, 9 pi, they're telling us is their circumference. So we're going to set that equal to our equation for the circumference, which is 2 pi r. And we really like equations like these because we can simply divide both sides of our equation by pi to get rid of pi there. So bye-bye pi. All right, so now that pi's gone, we are left with 9 equals 2r. So remember, we're trying to get the diameter. And if we come over here, we see that the diameter is actually equal to 2 times the radius. So we just found our diameter right here. So instead of dividing both sides of my equation by 2 and finding out that my radius is actually 4.5 and then multiplying 4.5 by 2 again to find that my diameter is 9, I'm going to replace this 2r with d. And now I know that my diameter is 9 centimeters. That is my diameter. I just found my diameter. So now they ask us, what is the radius? So now I'm going to go back to that equation that I just had, which is 9 equals 2r. And I'm going to divide both sides of my equation by 2 because I'm trying to get r all by itself. And I find that my radius is 4.5 centimeters. Remember, we're always carrying with us those units. So my radius is 4.5 centimeters. Now they ask us, what is the area? Well, now we're really lucky because we actually know the diameter and the radius, and our area asks for us to use the radius. So our area is pi r squared. So I'm going to go ahead and substitute pi multiplied by my radius, which is 4.5 squared. So I'm going to write my area in 2 ways. I could write my area simply as, well, 4.5 times 4.5 is 20.25. So I could leave my answer as 20.25 pi centimeters squared, or I could actually multiply 20.25 by pi. And if I were to do that times 20.25, I get 63.62 centimeters squared. So I am happy either way you write out the area, but you can write it out in terms of pi, meaning you leave the pi symbol in there, or you can multiply the pi symbol by your number in terms of either 22/7 or 3.14 or the pi button on your calculator to find that the area is actually 63.62 centimeters squared. It does not matter to me which you choose. So this slide is really important because I really gave you all of the information that you need to know in terms of finding the area of shapes combined together. So we're now going to look at, or I'm sorry, in terms of just a circle in general. So since the point of this lesson was really to find the area of shapes combined together, we're going to move ahead to the next slide where we're actually going to see a rectangle with 2 quarter circles inside that rectangle. And they ask us something very different from what we've seen, but you guys need to know it. All right, so let's take a look now at this, this question. So number 4, we skipped number 3. It was a silly question and you didn't need to know it. So it says, find the area in the rectangle between the 2 quarter circles if AF equals 7. So firstly, I want to go back. It says, find the area in the rectangle between the 2 quarter circles. So we're looking for this space right here, okay, between the 2 quarter circles. All right, now let's move on to the information that they're giving us. They're saying if AF is 7 feet, so they're telling us this is 7 feet right here. FB is 9 feet. And HD, where's HD? HD is right here, is 7 feet as well. Okay, so this is a rectangle, and I need to know that information. So it asks us to use pi as an approximation of 22/7. Each quarter circle in the top left and lower right corners have the same radius. Okay, so they told us that the radius of these semicircles is 7 feet. So I'm going to write out 2 things. Remember that we find the area of a quarter circle by saying 1/4, 1/4 pi r squared. And we find the area of a rectangle by length times width. Okay. So it does not matter which one we find the area of first. It's probably easier to find the area of the quarter circle first. So let's do that. So the area of the quarter circle, so equals 1/4 pi times the radius squared. Now they gave us the information that the radius of our semicircles are 7 feet. So we're simply going to plug that information in. So multiplied by, and remember we're using 22/7 as an approximation for pi, so I'm going to plug that in there. And I know that my radius is 7 squared. Okay. So I'm going to write this out so we can multiply straight across. So I've got 1/4 times 22/7, and 7 times 7 is 49, so multiplied by 49/1. All right, so I'm going to multiply straight across. So I'm going to multiply 49 by 22, and I get 1,078. And 1,078 times 1 is 1,078. And now 4 times 7 on the bottom times 1 is 28. So I'm interested in seeing how many times 28 goes into 1,078. So 1,078 divided by 28 is equal to 38.5 feet squared. Now remember that's the area of one semicircle. Since I have 2 semicircles, I'm going to multiply that number by 2. And when I multiply that number by 2, I get the area of these semicircles combined is 77 feet squared. So that's important information for me to know. Now, I'm going to write out over here, or actually we're just going to take a look at this in a different way. So we actually have a rectangle right here, and it's a funky rectangle, but it's a rectangle. Okay, so they told us firstly that the length is 7 feet plus 9 feet. So I'm going to write over here the length is equal to 7 feet plus 9 feet. And so when we add 7 plus 9, we get 16. So the length is 16 feet. And my width, remember, they told us that, well, this part of our, let me erase this so that you guys can see this. They said H to D was 7 feet, okay? Well, this length looks like the same length as this one. So I'm going to find the width of my rectangle by simply saying 7 feet plus 7 feet equals 14 feet. Okay, so now I can find the area of my rectangle. So remember, the area of my rectangle is length times width. So I'm simply going to multiply 16 feet by 14 feet. And when I multiply those two numbers together, so I've got 16 times 14, that gives me 224 feet squared. Now, I want us to understand that I just found the area of the entire rectangle, meaning the entire inside of my rectangle. Yes, ma'am. Yes. Can you hear me? Yes. Shucks, I forgot to record it. All right, so what we just did was we subtracted the area of the entire rectangle from the area of those semicircles, and we concluded that the area between those semicircles is 147 feet squared. Okay, so that is the end of that. So I'm going to stop this.